The gemstone most associated with wealth isn't necessarily the rarest, the most expensive, or even the most famous. In fact, some of the strongest signals of wealth are hidden in choices most people never think about. Over time, certain gemstones have become symbols of confidence, authority, taste, legacy, and quiet success. Not because they cost the most, but because they communicate something deeper. And once you understand those signals, you'll start noticing them everywhere. Today, we're counting down 10 gemstones Americans often associate with wealth, status, and sophistication, and by the end, you'll discover the one gemstone that may be the most universally recognized signal of wealth without ever looking flashy. Let's begin with a stone that reveals one of the biggest misconceptions people have about looking wealthy. Number 10. Tahitian Pearl, the wealth signal most people never notice. When most people imagine a gemstone associated with wealth, they often picture something designed to command attention. A large diamond, a vivid sapphire, an emerald that immediately catches the eye from across the room. Yet among many Americans drawn to the idea of quiet luxury, one of the most interesting status signals does exactly the opposite. The Tahitian pearl rarely dominates a room, and that may be the reason it commands so much respect. Unlike traditional white pearls, Tahitian pearls are known for their darker body colors. Shades of charcoal, silver, green, peacock, and deep graphite create an appearance that feels restrained rather than decorative. They do not sparkle like diamonds. They do not flash brilliant colors like opals. They simply exist with a calm confidence that seems completely uninterested in attracting approval. That subtle difference reveals an important truth about how wealth is often perceived. Many luxury purchases are designed to be noticed. The strongest wealth signals are often designed not to care whether they are noticed at all. This is one reason Tahitian pearls have become associated with a particular kind of sophistication. They suggest that the wearer values taste over trends and individuality over recognition. In social environments where luxury is common, that distinction can matter far more than size or price. Collectors and jewelry experts frequently point out that Tahitian pearls are difficult to evaluate casually. Their value is influenced by overtone color, surface quality, luster, shape, and rarity. To someone unfamiliar with pearls, two pieces may appear nearly identical. To someone who understands them, the difference can be extraordinary. That hidden layer of knowledge creates another form of prestige. The appeal is no longer about showing everyone what something costs. It becomes about recognizing what others overlook. In many ways, Tahitian pearls represent the first lesson of this countdown. Looking wealthy is not always about appearing richer. Sometimes it is about appearing more selective, more confident, more comfortable with not being understood immediately. And that idea becomes even more interesting when wealth is expressed through individuality rather than restraint. Because the next gemstone is chosen by people who are not trying to blend in at all. Instead, they want a luxury statement that feels impossible to duplicate and almost impossible to ignore. Number 9. Black Opal, when wealth stops following the crowd. If Tahitian pearls represent confidence that doesn't seek attention, black opal represents something entirely different. Confidence that doesn't seek permission. One of the most common assumptions about wealth is that affluent people tend to buy the same things, the same watches, the same luxury brands, the same symbols everyone already recognizes. But in reality, some of the strongest status signals emerge when people move away from what everyone expects. That is where black opal enters the conversation. Unlike many gemstones prized for consistency, black opal is celebrated for unpredictability. No two stones display exactly the same patterns. Electric blues may appear beside flashes of green. Fiery reds can emerge from dark backgrounds that seem almost cosmic. Every specimen develops its own visual identity, and that uniqueness has become part of its appeal. In luxury culture, there is a significant difference between owning something expensive and owning something personal. The first demonstrates purchasing power. The second demonstrates confidence in individual taste. That distinction matters because many high-net-worth individuals eventually reach a point where exclusivity becomes more important than recognition. The goal is no longer to own what everyone admires. The goal is to own something that feels impossible to replicate. Black opal fits that mindset remarkably well. Gemologists often describe exceptional black opals as nature's fingerprints. Their patterns cannot be mass-produced. Their colors cannot be perfectly predicted. Even experienced collectors may spend years searching for a stone with a specific appearance. That search itself becomes part of the story, and stories are often more valuable than possessions. This helps explain why black opal occupies a unique position within luxury jewelry. It rarely communicates traditional wealth. Instead, it communicates individuality. It suggests that the wearer values originality over convention and personal expression over public approval. For many Americans drawn to modern luxury, that message has become increasingly attractive. The cultural shift is subtle but important. A generation ago, status was often communicated through visibility. Today, status is frequently communicated through distinction, not through owning what everyone recognizes, through choosing what almost nobody else would choose. Black opal captures that idea perfectly. It transforms luxury from a display of resources into a reflection of identity. But individuality is only one form of status. The next gemstone reveals something even older and more powerful. Because long before luxury became a matter of personal expression, certain gemstones were already associated with authority itself. Number 8. Emerald, the gemstone that signals authority before wealth. Individuality can attract attention. Authority commands it. That difference helps explain why emeralds have occupied a unique place in the language of status for centuries. Unlike many gemstones associated primarily with beauty, emeralds have long been associated with something far more influential: power. Throughout history, emeralds repeatedly appeared in the collections of rulers, political elites, aristocrats, and influential families. While fashions changed and luxury trends came and went, emeralds maintained a remarkable connection to leadership and prestige. That connection still exists today. In the United States, many gemstones are viewed as symbols of wealth. Emeralds often go a step further. They are frequently perceived as symbols of confidence, influence, and authority. Part of that impression comes from color psychology. The deep green of a fine emerald feels different from the brilliance of a diamond or the fiery flashes of an opal. It does not compete for attention through sparkle. Instead, it creates a sense of stability and presence. People often notice it immediately without fully understanding why. Luxury experts sometimes describe certain materials as carrying visual weight. Emerald is one of them. A large diamond may suggest success. A remarkable emerald often suggests significance. That distinction is subtle but powerful. It helps explain why emerald jewelry is frequently chosen by individuals who want to project sophistication without appearing trendy. Emeralds rarely feel temporary. They rarely feel tied to a specific moment in fashion. Instead, they carry an impression of permanence, and permanence is one of the oldest status signals in existence. True authority is rarely associated with whatever is currently popular. It is associated with longevity. This is where emeralds become especially interesting from a cultural perspective. Many people assume wealth is communicated through visibility. Yet some of the strongest luxury signals come from objects that imply history, confidence, and continuity. Emeralds communicate those ideas naturally because generations of influential figures have already attached those meanings to them. In other words, the stone benefits from centuries of accumulated symbolism. That symbolism continues to influence perception today. An emerald is not merely seen as valuable. It is often seen as established. And in many social environments, appearing established can be more powerful than appearing wealthy. But even authority has limits, because there is another status signal that predates modern luxury, predates contemporary wealth, and in many cases predates the institutions that define prestige itself. The next gemstone is associated with something even older, not power, legacy. Number 7. South Sea Pearl, the difference between wealth and old wealth. Authority can be earned. Legacy is inherited, and few gemstones illustrate that distinction more clearly than the South Sea Pearl. At first glance, its appearance can seem surprisingly understated. There are no dramatic flashes of color. No dazzling sparkle competing for attention. No visual effects designed to dominate a room. For someone measuring luxury through visibility alone, a South Sea pearl might even appear too simple. That reaction reveals one of the most fascinating truths about status. The highest levels of wealth often stop trying to look wealthy. This idea sits at the center of what many Americans describe as old money culture. Unlike new wealth, which frequently celebrates achievement through visibility, old wealth often communicates confidence through restraint. The goal is not to demonstrate success. The goal is to appear completely comfortable with it. That subtle difference changes everything. A South Sea pearl can take years to form under highly specific conditions. Exceptional specimens are rare, difficult to cultivate, and valued for qualities that are often invisible to casual observers. Size, luster, surface quality, shape, and origin all influence desirability. Yet most of those details are not obvious at first glance, and that is precisely the point. Old wealth has never depended on universal recognition. It depends on selective recognition. The people who understand it recognize it immediately. The people who do not understand it are not the intended audience. This creates a completely different type of luxury signal. Instead of saying, "Look at what this cost," it quietly suggests, "Those who know, know." That philosophy appears repeatedly across generations of established wealth. Historic estates, family heirlooms, private collections, and carefully preserved traditions often carry greater social weight than objects chosen solely for attention. South Sea pearls fit naturally into that world because they represent continuity rather than novelty. They do not feel fashionable. They feel permanent, and permanence is one of the strongest indicators of legacy. Perhaps that is why these pearls continue to appear in collections associated with timeless elegance rather than temporary trends. Their appeal comes not from being louder than everything else, but from seeming completely unaffected by whatever happens to be popular at the moment. In a culture constantly chasing the next luxury obsession, that kind of stability becomes a status symbol of its own. But legacy is not the only way affluent people communicate prestige, because beyond inherited traditions lies another category entirely, a form of status recognized far beyond the United States, a language of wealth that crosses cultures, generations, and continents. And the next gemstone may be one of the most powerful examples of that phenomenon. Number 6. Jadeite, the status symbol that doesn't need Western approval. Legacy can create prestige, but some forms of prestige are so deeply rooted that they transcend trends, industries, and even cultures. That is where jadeite becomes impossible to ignore. For many Americans, gemstones associated with wealth often include diamonds, sapphires, emeralds, and pearls. These stones have been celebrated for generations and remain powerful symbols of luxury. Yet beyond that familiar framework exists another gemstone whose reputation was built through an entirely different path. A path measured not in decades but in centuries. Jadeite occupies a unique position in the world of luxury because its significance extends far beyond jewelry. In many cultures, it has been connected to status, heritage, scholarship, leadership, and social standing for generations. Its influence was never dependent on modern marketing. It existed long before modern luxury brands appeared. That distinction matters. Many luxury symbols rise and fall with changing tastes. A trend becomes fashionable, reaches its peak, and eventually fades. Jadeite has survived countless shifts in fashion because its value was never built solely on appearance. It was built on meaning. And meaning is one of the most durable forms of prestige. This helps explain why exceptional jadeite continues to command extraordinary respect among collectors and connoisseurs around the world. The finest examples display a combination of color, translucency, texture, and rarity that can take decades to fully appreciate. To an untrained observer, some pieces may seem surprisingly understated. To those who understand them, they represent generations of cultural significance. That gap between appearance and understanding creates a powerful social signal. In many ways, jadeite embodies a type of wealth that does not seek validation from the broader public. It does not depend on recognition from strangers. It does not require trends to justify its importance. Its prestige exists whether people notice it or not, and that may be one of the strongest luxury signals imaginable, because true status often becomes most visible when it no longer depends on visibility. For affluent collectors, this creates an entirely different form of appeal. Ownership is not about displaying success. It is about participating in a story that stretches across generations and across continents. That story carries a kind of authority that cannot be manufactured overnight. It must be inherited, preserved, and understood. And yet, even global prestige is not the highest level of wealth signaling, because after status, authority, legacy, and cultural significance comes something even more exclusive. A signal that reveals not how much someone owns, but how refined their taste has become. And the next gemstone may be one of the clearest examples of that distinction. Number 5. Padparadscha sapphire, when taste becomes more valuable than money. By this point, the pattern is becoming clear. Confidence can signal wealth. Individuality can signal wealth. Authority, legacy, and global prestige can all signal wealth. But eventually, another question emerges. What happens when money is no longer the differentiator? What happens when everyone in the room can afford luxury? That is where taste begins to matter. And few gemstones illustrate that idea more effectively than the Padparadscha sapphire. Unlike traditional blue sapphires, which are instantly recognizable, Padparadscha sapphires occupy a much more unusual position in the luxury world. Their delicate blend of pink and orange tones creates a color that often resists simple description. In fact, many people encounter one without immediately realizing what it is. And that uncertainty is part of the appeal, because refined taste is rarely built around obvious choices. Most status symbols become status symbols because millions of people recognize them. Taste works differently. Taste often reveals itself through selections that require attention, education, and discernment to appreciate fully. That distinction becomes increasingly important at higher levels of wealth. When luxury becomes accessible, recognition becomes common. When recognition becomes common, exclusivity shifts elsewhere. It shifts toward judgment. This helps explain why certain collectors become fascinated by gemstones that do not dominate headlines or advertising campaigns. The attraction is not necessarily about rarity alone. It is about choosing something that feels deliberate, something that demonstrates appreciation rather than acquisition. Padparadscha sapphire embodies that philosophy. Its reputation was never built on overwhelming visibility. It was built on subtlety. The finest examples are admired because they achieve a balance that is extraordinarily difficult to find. Too much pink and the character changes. Too much orange and the identity shifts again. The most respected stones exist within a remarkably narrow range. That pursuit of nuance mirrors how sophisticated taste often develops. The goal is no longer finding the most obvious luxury item. The goal becomes recognizing distinctions that others overlook. And that ability carries its own form of prestige. In many affluent circles, taste functions as a social language. It quietly communicates patience, knowledge, and discernment. It suggests that choices are being made intentionally rather than simply following what everyone else already values. That is why some of the most respected luxury decisions are not necessarily the loudest. They are the most thoughtful. Padparadscha sapphire represents that idea beautifully, not because it demands attention, but because it rewards understanding. And yet there is still another level beyond refined taste. Because some status signals are not built on what a person chooses, they are built on how little that person needs to prove. And the next gemstone may be one of the strongest examples of quiet authority in the entire world of luxury. Number 4. Star sapphire, the luxury signal that doesn't need attention. Refined taste can earn admiration, but authority creates something entirely different: influence, and influence rarely announces itself. This is one of the most overlooked lessons in the world of luxury. Many people assume status is about being noticed. They imagine prestige as something visible, something obvious, something that immediately captures attention. Yet some of the most powerful individuals rarely rely on that approach. They do not need to dominate a room. They simply change the atmosphere within it. That distinction helps explain the enduring appeal of star sapphire. At first glance, it may seem like an unusual choice. Compared to diamonds, emeralds, or even traditional sapphires, star sapphire rarely occupies the center of luxury advertising campaigns. It is not the gemstone most people associate with glamour or celebrity culture, and that is precisely what makes it interesting. Because quiet authority rarely follows popular expectations. The most respected examples of star sapphire display a luminous, star-like phenomenon that appears to move across the surface of the stone as light shifts. The effect is subtle, almost understated compared to the brilliance of many modern gemstones. It rewards observation, not attention. That difference mirrors the nature of influence itself. Authority often becomes strongest when it no longer needs to prove its existence. This principle appears repeatedly throughout business, leadership, and social dynamics. The individuals with the most confidence rarely spend their energy convincing others that they matter. Their position already communicates that message. Luxury can operate the same way. A gemstone chosen purely for recognition serves one purpose. A gemstone chosen because it reflects identity serves another. Star sapphire often belongs to the second category. Its appeal is rarely driven by trends. It tends to attract individuals who appreciate restraint, symbolism, and permanence over visibility. In many ways, it represents a rejection of status competition itself. That rejection becomes a status signal, because confidence changes once external validation is no longer required. For many affluent Americans, that idea has become increasingly appealing. The goal is not always to possess the loudest symbol of success. Sometimes the goal is to demonstrate complete comfort without needing public confirmation. Star sapphire communicates that mindset remarkably well. It suggests composure. It suggests self-assurance. And perhaps most importantly, it suggests that influence does not always need to be seen to be felt. Yet even quiet authority is not the highest form of wealth signaling, because there is another category of luxury that has become increasingly admired in recent years, a form of status built not on power, recognition, or influence, but on deliberate restraint. And the next gemstone may be one of the most celebrated symbols of quiet luxury in the modern world. Number 3. Kashmir sapphire, the gemstone behind quiet luxury. For decades, luxury was often associated with visibility, the largest house, the most recognizable brand, the most obvious display of success. But something began to change. Across many affluent communities in the United States, a different philosophy started gaining influence. Instead of asking how wealth could be displayed, people began asking how it could be understood without being displayed at all. That shift became known as quiet luxury, and few gemstones embody that idea more completely than the Kashmir sapphire. Unlike symbols designed to attract immediate attention, Kashmir sapphires are admired for qualities that are often difficult to appreciate instantly. Their reputation is not built on dramatic brilliance or overwhelming size. It is built on nuance. The finest examples possess a distinctive velvety appearance that collectors and gem experts have admired for generations. To someone unfamiliar with gemstones, that characteristic may seem subtle. To someone who understands its significance, it can be extraordinary. That difference reveals something important about quiet luxury. Its value rarely depends on public recognition. In fact, public recognition can sometimes weaken the signal, because quiet luxury is not designed for everyone. It is designed for people who understand what they are seeing. This philosophy has become increasingly influential among affluent Americans who have grown tired of status symbols that feel predictable. When luxury becomes too obvious, it begins to lose its ability to communicate individuality and discernment. Subtlety becomes the new form of exclusivity. Kashmir sapphire fits perfectly within that framework. Its reputation was not built through mass exposure or widespread marketing. Instead, it grew through decades of admiration among collectors, connoisseurs, and experts who valued qualities invisible to most observers. That creates a fascinating social dynamic. Many luxury purchases seek validation from the largest possible audience. Quiet luxury seeks validation from the smallest possible audience, the audience that truly understands. This is why Kashmir sapphire has become associated with a very specific kind of status. Not the status of visibility, the status of restraint. It suggests that the wearer no longer needs universal recognition to feel confident in a choice. And that confidence is powerful, because at the highest levels of wealth, impressing strangers becomes far less important than expressing identity. In many ways, Kashmir sapphire represents the evolution of luxury itself. It reflects a movement away from display and toward discretion, away from attention and toward understanding. Yet even quiet luxury is not the final stage of status, because beyond taste, beyond restraint, and beyond recognition lies something even more influential, a form of prestige that cannot be purchased overnight. It must be inherited through history. And the next gemstone may be one of the strongest examples of that idea in the entire world of luxury. Number 2. Colombian emerald, when prestige is inherited through history. Quiet luxury is powerful, but heritage is different. Quiet luxury suggests refined judgment. Heritage suggests permanence. And in the world of gemstones, few names carry that kind of weight more consistently than the Colombian emerald. At first glance, this might seem surprising. After all, emeralds have already appeared earlier in this countdown, yet the distinction here is not the gemstone itself. It is the origin, because in luxury culture, origin can become a status signal of its own. Some objects are admired because they are beautiful. Some are admired because they are rare. Others are admired because they belong to a story that began long before the current owner ever encountered them. That is where Colombian emeralds occupy a unique position. For generations, the finest emeralds from Colombia have been associated with royalty, influential collectors, historic jewelry houses, museum-worthy pieces, and some of the most celebrated gemstones ever discovered. Over time, that history created something far more valuable than recognition. It created credibility, and credibility accumulates. Every generation that respects an object adds another layer to its reputation. This process is remarkably similar to the way heritage itself develops. A family name, a historic institution, or a respected tradition becomes influential because trust compounds over time. The same phenomenon can occur in luxury. A Colombian emerald does not simply represent a gemstone, it represents centuries of admiration attached to a specific source. That distinction matters because status often comes from association. People are not only responding to the object itself, they are responding to everything connected to it: the history, the reputation, the legacy, the stories carried forward through generations. This helps explain why some affluent collectors pursue provenance with such intensity. The appeal extends beyond ownership. It becomes participation in an established narrative that already possesses cultural significance. In many ways, heritage functions as a shortcut to prestige. Instead of introducing itself, it arrives with credibility already attached. That is a remarkably powerful signal, especially in a society where attention is increasingly temporary. Colombian emeralds stand apart because they seem untouched by that cycle. Their reputation does not depend on a current trend, a celebrity endorsement, or a changing luxury movement. Their status feels older than all of those things, and that sense of continuity is difficult to replicate. Yet there is still one final gemstone remaining, one gemstone that brings together nearly every lesson from this countdown. Confidence, authority, legacy, taste, quiet luxury, heritage, not as separate ideas, but as a single, universally recognized signal. And that is what makes the number 1 gemstone so remarkable. Number 1. Natural blue sapphire, the wealth signal. Everyone understands. Throughout this countdown, a pattern has emerged. Some gemstones communicate confidence, others communicate individuality. Some signal authority, legacy, heritage, or refined taste. Each one represents a different language of status. But what happens when all of those ideas converge into a single symbol? That is where the natural blue sapphire stands alone. Unlike many gemstones that require expertise to appreciate fully, blue sapphires occupy a rare position in luxury culture. They are recognized by experts, respected by collectors, admired by jewelry enthusiasts, and understood by the general public. That combination is extraordinarily uncommon. Most status symbols operate within a specific audience. Blue sapphire speaks across audiences, and that may be its greatest strength. For generations, sapphire has been associated with stability, confidence, dignity, and sophistication. It has appeared in royal collections, historic jewelry pieces, private estates, and some of the most recognizable luxury settings in the world. Over time, those associations became deeply embedded in public perception. As a result, blue sapphire developed something few gemstones ever achieve: universal recognition without losing prestige. That balance is incredibly difficult to maintain. Many luxury symbols become too common and lose their exclusivity. Others remain so obscure that only specialists understand them. Blue sapphire occupies a rare middle ground. It remains respected even when widely recognized. That distinction explains why it continues to appeal to affluent Americans seeking a subtle expression of success. A sapphire does not typically create the same immediate reaction as a large diamond, and that is precisely the point. The signal is different. Rather than saying, "Look at what this cost," it often suggests, "Look at the choices that were made." That shift from price to judgment has appeared repeatedly throughout this countdown, and blue sapphire brings that lesson into focus better than almost any other gemstone. Its appeal is not built solely on rarity, not solely on beauty, not solely on history. It combines all of those elements into a symbol that feels complete. Confidence without arrogance, luxury without excess, prestige without explanation. In many ways, it represents the modern ideal of wealth, not wealth that demands attention, wealth that feels secure enough to exist without it. And perhaps that is the most important lesson hidden inside every gemstone on this list. The people who appear wealthy are not always the ones displaying the most wealth. Often they are the ones sending the strongest signals. Signals of confidence, signals of taste, signals of history, signals of identity. And among Americans who want to look wealthy without saying a word, few gemstones communicate those ideas more clearly than a remarkable natural blue sapphire. After all 10 gemstones, one lesson stands out. The strongest signals of wealth are not always the loudest. Whether it's confidence, taste, legacy, or quiet luxury, these gemstones reveal that status is often communicated through subtle choices rather than obvious displays. So which gemstone on this list do you think sends the strongest signal of wealth without saying a word? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next countdown.